Doom is beautiful. It's a symphony of violence that sings in the key of rage. And baby, I bought season tickets to the orchestra. Anger is a very important emotion to me. Frankly, I don't see how being conscious doesn't make you pissed off your every waking second. And you think that's juvenile, or you can take a look outside. Things aren't that great out there. I find anger to be nourishing, and I find art to be even more so. A piece of art that has a central character embodying anger itself, who's so pissed off they've become a mythic rage golem willing to fight the things they hate until everything worth hating is dead. Did you guys know I needed that, or is this an insanely lucky coincidence for yours truly? I'm joking, of course. This planet does not spin to my desires. The engines of this planet actually run on the suffering of billions, past, present, and future. And the bloodshed of kittens, metaphorically speaking. We're clearly firing on all cylinders today. I'll delve into why, and why this piece ultimately means so much to me. But first, we've got to set the stage to understand the environment that cultivated this festival of virtual evisceration. For our purposes, the story of id Software begins in 1993 with the publication of their third title, a little game simply called Doom. It's a well-trodden tale that the original Doom was the granddaddy seahorse that explosively gave birth to not only first-person shooters, but to PC gaming in general. Doom was such a big hit that it was, at one point, installed on more personal computers than Windows. Check this out. They even got Jeffrey Epstein's close personal friend Bill Gates to stand in front of a green screen so he could act like hell was real. If it is, about the closest thing to it I can imagine is being stuck in a room with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates, incidentally. The guy who whipped up the innovative engine that ran Doom was this computer who knows jujitsu named John Carmack. It's in August of 2007 that Carmack makes the public announcement that Doom 4 had entered production. Up until that point, every id game since the company's inception ran on an engine built by Carmack. Each of his id tech designs was groundbreaking in some new way, presumably because Carmack can just stick his finger in the USB port and talk to the operating system. After scraps of information dribbled out here and there, Kotaku got the inside scoop that Doom 4 had spent its 7 years of production stuck in development hell, with a more Call of Duty-focused direction that pivoted from Doom 3's horror-focused approach. The real kicker then came in 2013, as John Carmack left id Software because the guys who bought id wouldn't let him build the virtual reality simulation Mark Zuckerberg is going to trap us all in while he feasts on our bone marrow to stay young. So he moved to Oculus VR, where he could do that. He brought with him a majority of the team building the next id tech engine, gutting the already down Doom 4. It was going to take some new blood to jumpstart this puppy. One such new hire was Hugo Martin. In 2013, Martin became the game's new creative director, working alongside current director Marty Stratton. They took a back-to-basics approach, looking at the foundational game design of the original Doom and Doom 2, and working to translate that into a modern shooter. That process eventually whittled down the core of Doom's gameplay to this. You're always moving, always killing, and to give that an energy, you're now always pissed off. The team at id came together to all spill their creative love into a new seahorse, and eventually, that boy was about to burst. In 2014, behind closed doors at QuakeCon, people got their first taste of that new vision in a little game boldly and proudly calling itself, simply, Doom. Is anybody else wishing I'd get on with things? Well, saddle up, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to go on a heavy metal joyride, embodying what it means to be a barbarian of righteous fury, whose rage cracks bolts of fear into the hearts of all who oppose him. I could do that in real life if I didn't have these fucking noodle arms. Oh, and by the way, we all know he's the Doom Marine, but have you ever wondered what rank he is? Turns out, he's a private. We open with the world's coolest opening narration, as an angry sigil is carved into the screen. Our vision materializes the devastation before us. We find ourselves chained to a stone sarcophagus, freed from some brimstone prison where the demons held us for untold generations, hoping to be free of our apocalyptic rage till the end of time. They bought really shitty chains though, and we break free and assess the situation, finding ourselves surrounded by corpses whose sinew has been twisted and made animate again by the force of hell itself.
A sarcophagus. How queer. Let me just flex my incredible biceps here. No biting.
With a shoddy pistol left resting at our bedside, we poke these monsters to death and attempt to exit the room.
Oh, guns kill people.
A holographic recording plays before we can head out, where the people we just fried are bowing before us, and this lady whose bones are on the outside is very upset by our sleeping. Just outside the door you find the Praetor suit, the Slayer's suit of armor and his massacre of demonkind. We reach out to it with familiarity before Satan beams a Lord of the Rings vision directly into our skulls. It's meant to torture us with dreams of our past, as well as bits of our journey to come. The Slayer is unperturbed and dons his knightly helmet. It calibrates itself, ready to shield us from the buckets of blood we're about to be bathing in. I hope it came with wiper blades. We need to get a read on the situation. This iPad here would normally provide answers, but it appears a satellite dish is out of alignment, and it must be brought back online before we can figure out how hell broke loose into a world that does not belong to them. It's here we get introduced to Dr. Samuel Hayden, a dude with an even cooler voice than the last guy. But right as you think he's going to be a constant voice in your ear stringing you along objectives, the Slayer throws him aside. I love that punk rock, you can't tell me what to do attitude that our main character, and to an extent the design as a whole, is embodying. I mean, that's been in the DNA of Doom since the start. A technical revolution that sprung forth because a couple guys set out to break all the technical rules and look cool while doing it. In the next room, we're introduced to Glory Kills, the fiery engine driving the game's combat design. From what I understand from some interviews with Martin, once this system got figured out, the rest of the game started to blossom around this core mechanic. Once an enemy is at low enough health, they become staggered, and you can activate an animation where you rip and/or tear a demon so furiously it literally rejuvenates you. You're completely invulnerable during the quick animation, making these just feel good to execute. I always make Glory Kills a central element of my playstyle, relying on them to zip around arenas and be rewarded with health as the game starts to tighten the vise. But we'll get there. The game keeps rocking along as we nab the combat shotgun and get to see what it's about to be used on. This imp.
Ronald Reagan, is that you?
With that, we get to experience what the game is all about through, get this, nothing but gameplay. I love this room. I'm reminded of something like Batman Arkham City, where every single design element is handed to you basically one by one, and mostly through intrusive tutorial segments. Here though, you start the fight and you're thrown into combat, and the game tells you, without stopping, how this is going to work. The imps hop around this room at such a speed that you have to constantly be on the move, and in tandem with the Glory Kills, this is the basis of the push-forward combat that became the backbone of Doom's design. The team wanted you to play like you're constantly furious, steam coming out of your ears at every second. So these rooms reward movement, but the fun is in the movement itself. The enemy AI then forces you to dance around their behavior. This all culminates in the game emphasizing, if you stay still, you get to see what your insides look like. And from that core design philosophy came other rejections of convention in service to push-forward combat. There's no cover, you don't regenerate health, and you don't reload. Push-forward combat means imbuing the play with sheer momentum. And to keep that up, the devs make sure you're rewarded for always moving and relentless glory killing. After clearing the room of the demonic infestation, we make our way to an elevator that will get us up to the surface. Once we're in there, Hayden chimes back in to offer some great dialogue. It could very easily come across as cliche, but the way it's written makes it seem believable coming from this character. You get to know a lot about him without the lines feeling trite. The animation touches are great too, giving us some visual storytelling. We're off to a killer fucking start. With that, we get the sickest title drop in video game history. He even cocks the shotgun to the beat. Can I kiss the people who made this? The elevator exits out onto the surface of the red planet, and we get a chance to soak in some very atmospheric imagery. It sets the tone nicely, as we watch the brick-colored sands blow across the creeping, looming plateaus spattered across this vast Martian mountain. We feel so alone, isolated on a landscape that reminds us of Earth but is uncannily dry and lifeless. The only hint of humanity we get is the occasional mechanical reminder that this was once a giant mining operation. The game continues to catapult us right into the action as we barrel into another combat arena. We get introduced to a new enemy in the Possessed Soldier, whose projectiles fire at a faster rate and hit harder than the shots from an imp. Just more ways to encourage creative movement around these spaces. This more open level gives me the chance to express my love of the art design. These exteriors have been convincingly painted to look like lived-in, functioning environments for people in the story. At the same time, that quote-unquote realism never detracts from these levels being fun to move through, so it's not like you're awkwardly moving around a space that just can't accommodate the Slayer's birthing hips. The devs are riding this razor-thin line between a space that tastes real enough while actually being an artificial obstacle course, and feeling fun to move through above all else. Here's a little example that made me smile. These minecarts over here are hiding ammo and armor pickups. It's gamey, but maintains that functioning illusion within the context of the game world. It's like an intricate diorama you can play in. We get introduced to this robot who deals out weapon mods too. These guys will give you one of two switchable secondary fires for one of your many dispensaries of demon desecration. Except for right now, where all you have is that one shotgun you pulled from a guy who became a door. I used to go for the explosive shot, but nowadays I'm partial to the shotgun's burst fire. I like to go right up behind possessed soldiers and turn them to gelatin.
It's a good thing more people definitely went to heaven. Oh wait, I thought about it.
After a final push, we find our entrance to Resource Operations, where the offline satellite dish awaits realignment. That takes us to our next level, a bit more expansive than before. Here's Know Your Enemy. The first thing that happens is our introduction to Vega, the sentient AI tasked with running the UAC Mars facility. He's very pleasant. Unlike the AI that South African dipshit made to praise a certain 20th century political figure who murdered so many people he ruined an entire facial hairstyle, and downplay his own connection to our pal Jeffy Epi in first person for some reason. But how funny would it be if Vega was just like, unprompted, I only visited Jeffrey Epstein's home a dozen times and saw nothing illegal. Then I got brain cancer and they stopped letting my freaky robot body around the kids. We reactivate the power to the facility, and we get to see that lady with an outside spine give a final message to her sacrificial lambs before letting hell blow the place up. She wanted to be honest with those that didn't get the clearance to know their boss was trying to summon the devil. It doesn't take long to start expanding that arsenal, so we're quickly introduced to the chainsaw and the heavy assault rifle. The chainsaw will slice up enemies and turn their suffering into ammo. The heavy assault rifle gives us some range, and this outdoor arena gives us some space to play with it. Upon realigning the satellite dish, Hayden blocks our access to the data unless we make our way to a Vega terminal and agree to work with him to quell the invasion. With no other choice, we relent to Hayden's demands.
You know, Samuel, I didn't hear a please.
A short bit of platforming will get you to said Vega terminal, where Hayden gives us unfiltered Argent energy to upgrade our person.
Ow.
This allows us to upgrade our max health, ammo, armor. After we get beefed up, we get our first real glimpse at Dr. Samuel Hayden, cyborg director of the UAC. He gives Vega permission to reveal the base stats to us. The kindly computer uncle reveals over 60,000 UAC personnel were killed when a hell wave was unleashed from the Lazarus labs, transforming the employees into the demons roaming the place. Those not turned into hell zombies were killed by Olivia Pierce, the skeleton lady releasing demons from their holding cells here on Mars. God, Hayden's delivery is incredible. He's such an arrogant bastard, and the only other person alive to help us on this barren rock. What I love is that Hayden clearly already knew everything he's sharing with us. He just made us work to get information he could have freely offered, so we knew we needed him to get it. It's actor Darren DePaul providing the voice for Samuel Hayden. His performance here makes me want him in everything. Suddenly, Vega alerts us that the demons have overrun the foundry and are about to cause a meltdown that would erupt the entire facility. Hayden tells us that, if we want to live, we'll have to re-engage the venting turbines before we go thermonuclear. I don't know, I feel like I could take it. This leads to the foundry level. Meltdown. Hayden tells us the only way to get access to the turbines is to clear the demonic presence inside the foundry, on account of their advanced security systems. You'll have to get sweaty as you traverse this multi-story smelter to smite the 4 gore nests situated about the place. Man, these levels have been wonderfully streamlined. This is a huge open area that, again, feels functional. But the devs use locked doors to funnel your progression through a level that could feel overwhelming if you weren't guided by Hugo Martin's soft, ladylike hands. However, for those of you that like to rebel against God, you can still make the most of this movement through secret hunting. You get rewarded with helpful pickups or fun collectibles for experimenting with a fun system of movement. We're also getting introduced to new demons. One of my personal favorites is the Hell Knight, who charges you and can lay some very suppressive melee hits across your skull. At this point, he pretty radically shakes up the combat dance, interrupting your comfortable killing from a distance. The devs have described the arenas and enemies like pieces on a chessboard. That level of meticulous care being put into how these enemies behave and how that behavior will interact with the level design makes each arena a unique but fun new iteration of the most base satisfaction Doom has on offer. It's like if the pieces on a chessboard stayed the same, but every other turn the board changes shape. We get a new weapon here too. The classic plasma rifle was given a visual tweak to work within this piece's established art direction. And now that we have a couple guns, I'd like to regale you all with the terrible tale of my first playthrough. Originally, I was going to triumph over the campaign on ultraviolence, the hard skill, for the very first time. However, my first run-through was so boring I felt physically ill at the idea of having to edit it. The reason as to why it was so uninteresting will come up later, because it is a genuine point of contention I have with Doom 2016. But I went back and did a run-through again where I tried to mitigate those issues, and it just wasn't happening. So I started a third run, and the rules here were going to be a little different. I wanted to play like a true PC gamer, swapping guns in the heat of the moment, making life or death decisions under heavy demonic oppression. I unbound the weapon wheel and put all my firearms on convenient keys, because proportionally I have the hands of an infant and my fingers can't reach the numbers. Look, I'm not going to be doing any crazy quick swap combos, but it seemed like it would be fun to actually make the most of my mouse and keyboard. Like I said, Doom provided many firsts for me, and that now includes playing an FPS without analog sticks. It took a full swing to really get used to that, and so I now return for another go at the campaign with fingers ready to tango. They do still sometimes hit caps lock on accident though. There's one final gore nest situated at the base of the foundry. While fucking up these demons' day, it clicked how invigorating ultraviolence had been thus far. At this early stage, when our movement and arsenal is still limited, this is the perfect difficulty for me. It keeps the gameplay feeling razor sharp, as every time my health gets in the red, I feel it can create opportunities for glory kills to narrowly save me. I enjoyed splitting open the layers of this level, and after that last gore nest, we're funneled into the turbine room, where we narrowly prevent that meltdown the title apparently lied about. After clearing the room of the damned, Hayden radios in to tell us that someone's flipping switches in the control room. Upon investigation, it's revealed to be that Olivia lady. She locks Vega out of the system and reroutes all power to a structure on the base known as the Argent Tower. Hayden understands what she's doing. She plans to use that energy to blast open a portal to hell.
Stop touching things.
Olivia locks everything down on her way out, meaning we have to manually shut off the Argent Energy Tower. That leads to our next level, the beginning of the end. Papa Sam explains that Olivia is using the energy outputted by the tower to essentially drill a hole to the hell dimension, otherwise known as ours. To stop her, we can disable the tower by doing some science shit. I don't know, this guy's a nerd. The art direction is doing a great job of telling a progressing story in its own right. The closer we get to the heart of the UAC facility, the more we can see Hell's cultish influence start to infect even the architecture of the place. There's not just corpses strewn about anymore. The demons have made rituals of desecrating these bodies, and now skinned and mutilated victims of the Dark Realm's incursion dangle over burning sigils, as Hell's cruel influence twists the very spaces we walk through. Humans may have built this place, but the demons are making it feel like home. They left a little something to make me feel more at home, for this dead guy spent his final moments cradling this rocket launcher, our first heavy weapon. After some open arenas that gives us a chance to play with our expanding arsenal, we come upon the first of 3 induction filters. These are what manufacture Hell energy into Hayden's miracle battery, Argent Energy. With that in mind, Hayden begins to describe to us the delicate process required to temporarily shut all this down. This leads to one of my favorite moments in the game, where, to turn this thing off, we kick the shit out of it. This really is perfect. The animation emphasizes the comedic timing while also giving us a great look at our lead character. He doesn't say a word, but everything about him gets expressed with ruthless efficiency. He's a creature of rage whose anger is carried into every step. But it's a controlled, venomous hate that gets let loose only to end a fight as quickly as he can. This is a thing of pure yet matured aggression, whose hate is legendary, and we believe we're inhabiting him. It's also nice to piss off Hayden.
We're only temporarily disabling the tower. You need to remove each lens individually. Carefully release the hinges.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Ooh, and after destroying the 3rd filter, we get introduced to another new enemy. Meet the Summoner, who does that whole summoning thing while also darting around the arena and throwing out waved attacks that force more precise movement to avoid than what something like the Emperor the Soldier throws out. I like her a lot too. I love that she becomes an instant priority target, and the way she encourages your movement leads to some fun encounters. Throughout all this, we're getting more insight into the character of Samuel Hayden. He's so well written. Note his choice of words here. He angrily tells us they perfected the human science to make this immaculate energy source, and that he sold it to humanity. The solving of an energy crisis came at a literal price. Hayden's. And that makes me feel very vindicated breaking his stuff. I really like this level as a whole. The open arenas were fun to play about in and experiment with what weapons we've been given at this point. Because we're us, though, the arenas suffer a swift decline in the demon population, and past the final gore nest is the primary processor of the Argent Tower. A resigned Hayden tells us we need only destroy this last filter, and Argent energy will cease to exist.
Oh my god, I think there's a baby in there. This is not a baby.
Sam is, unsurprisingly, unhappy at our thrashing of his money-making generators. He doesn't get the chance to chew us out because the nicer voice on our head chimes in to tell us that Olivia herself still lives within the tower. Resigned, Hayden tells us dealing with her is the last thing to accomplish before this nightmare is over. With that, we're given the mission to kill Olivia Pierce in the Argent Tower. Vega lets us know there's only one remaining way into the tower, but to traverse that pipeline, we'll need some thrust boots kept in the janitor's closet. It's on the way down there that we get introduced to the Revenant, a skeleton that's always in the midst of screaming slurs at you as he flies around the stage, lobbing you with rockets. He's a fun addition. A classic Doom monster that incorporates heavier fire and threats from new elevations, which gives you some space to be creative in how you'll take him down. The thrust boots were indeed kept in some space welder's locker, and nabbing them nets us a double jump. This expansion to your movement kit is simple, but in these arenas, it's like giving an autistic kid whose special interest is violence even more Legos to build his saw traps with. With that double jump, we can hop across this shattered pipeline. We spy Olivia making her way to the top of the tower, where Hayden warns us the Argent accumulator she carries can be used to rip open a portal all by herself. We just barely miss her elevator, but a very soothing emotional salve sits propped up against this dead guy. My super shotgun. Christ, she's beautiful. Olivia is locked down the elevator. A habit of hers seems to be making shit unusable to me right after I watch her use it. Anyway, now we have to climb the tower ourselves. As we do that, we get to hear BFG Division to celebrate the procurement of my boomstick and my expert use of it. With that, it's time for a little musical aside. Doom singing in the key of rage is only so effective because of the electric violence in the backing track, and I wanted to give some sentence space to the composer of this soundtrack, Mick Gordon. When Gordon was brought onto the project, the team wanted to head in a more synthesizer-heavy direction, rather than metal. But after enough public showings, Gordon was given the go-ahead to start injecting some heavier guitars, and that was the soil that got fertilized with nitroglycerin to produce this pissed-off sound. I do think it's a little held back by that early marriage to synthesizers. Gordon really came to his own with the Metal of the Eternal soundtrack, and it easily overshadows this OST. But the finished record here then keeps that industrial feel with a heavy, angry 9-string electric guitar cutting through that noise to give us a raging, aggressive heartbeat. It mirrors much of the game itself, with our lead's unquenchable biblical rage cutting through the sci-fi setting to wreak havoc on demons from below. The energy on display here is still captivating, and if I didn't have the sublime heavy metal of Eternal to compare it to, I could love these pieces more. As it stands, making the music so front and center to keep the energy of Doom's gameplay constantly striking and aggressive was a genius move, and I'm so happy it lets me get enveloped by Gordon's songs as I play. This game would not have the same impact without Gordon's work, and not by a small margin either. We continue to trek through the bowels of the tower's architecture until we reach inside the structure, where hell energy was being pulled and funneled. We're also given a special cutscene to introduce us to the Mancubus, a heavy demon kept in the UAC holding cells. You know, it reminds me of Mom, but I have no fear that any of the demons I murder were once my mother. She's probably running things down there. Man, this was a fun arena. Every space the devs make you do some demon murder in has been so intentionally designed. Enemy behavior keeps you moving about these spaces, and the layouts have been built to make that movement feel as rewarding as possible. However, this arena did show off a little leak in the hull. Don't get me wrong, when all the systems are clicking together, it assaults your adrenal gland. And a big part of that comes from the way these enemies are spread across the map and programmed to always be on the move, keeping you doing the same. The flip side of this is that, every now and again, a single imp might survive the initial bloodbath, and then you're left hopping around this large open space looking for an AI that physically cannot stop moving. You can't progress until you kill the needle in the haystack, but the needle has legs, and sometimes has a hard time finding you. With enough demons reduced to meat, we're now free to scale the tower. The path forward is always simply but elegantly laid out before you via these glowing green light bars. They keep your eyes on which ledges you need to grab to move on without breaking the visual cohesion of the world. No amount of blinking green LEDs makes this climb super engaging, however. I would say it's boring just because the movement at a baseline is still pretty engaging, but the level design is doing nothing to make that movement feel more fun to use, so we'll just settle on this part being kind of bland. We make it to the top of the tower, but as tradition would have it, we're seconds too late from stopping Olivia from doing whatever weird shit she was planning on doing anyway. In a willing sacrifice to further Satan's design, Olivia throws herself and the accumulator into the hell energy still flowing from the tower. Argent's kiss supplies the power needed to carve open a hole to hell itself, and demons begin spilling through to make a playground of Mars.
That's probably fine.
Ultimately, is this portal to hell really such a bad thing if it means I get to hear more BFG Division? That's the real, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound type of philosophy we like to engage in around these parts. Philosophy is another export of hell, by the way. Our jam doesn't last, however, because we hold our own against the demons just long enough to be swallowed by the expanding portal. A new reality grabs us and rockets us to the underground, bringing the Slayer into a violent reunion with that landscape of sin. We get spit into a place in hell the demons speak of with fear and reverence on their tongues, for the Canninger Sanctum is a place that stokes horror in the hearts of even the most wretched of the damned. This is Into the Fire. Now we get introduced to Doom 2016's take on hell itself, and it fucking rules. I'm walking through a breathing Frank Frazetta painting here. There are giant spires of stone and bone that claw to hopeless above, and even the architecture is made to hate and despise you. The expanse is a lifeless crawl through a landscape stitched together by torture and misery. The place is painted with gothic metal brushstrokes, and that feels true to hell while also embodying the over-the-top, horns-out attitude that has been this piece's signature. This world may be made of anger, but my bite is worse than the glaring teeth of hell's lazy stone monstrosities. As we go deeper into the sanctum, we find a holographic record of the voyage of Samuel Hayden himself, where we discover the UAC set up a portal at the tomb. This is a nice way of justifying having those green lights in hell, but it's also an intriguing story beat. What was so important it got Hayden himself out here?
Oh, ghost!
After hopping around some stairs the devil just left floating there, I come upon another heavier weapon in the Gauss cannon. It eats plasma ammo, but packs a wallop up close. I had a lot of fun weaving it into my weapon swap combos on Hell Knights in particular. Damnation probably sucks if you go there for real. Sorry, infidels. But these arenas were a blast to visit virtually. The art direction and the set design are killer, obviously. But these places continue to organically lead me through the level in a way that's really clicking for me. Progression feels intuitive, and that's very rewarding for a guy who gets lost on his way to the restaurant bathroom. When I don't have to consciously think about where I need to go and how I need to get there, engaging with this movement and combat in tandem is a borderline zen experience. I'm totally engaged with how I'm going to creatively tackle the constructed problems put before me. Here's where I want to make note of Doom 2016's biggest flaw, in my opinion, and why I felt so compelled to re-record my footage so many times. Once I got the super shotgun, it was pretty much all I used. The issue is, I was at a skill level where I could only play as far as the game was going to push me. Real veterans of digital warfare naturally swap between weapons to keep themselves engaged, but you're not super incentivized to do so by the game itself. Maybe I'm just too passive a player, and I need to be firmly guided into the most enjoyable playstyle. Or I'm just too stupid to break free of using the easiest solution available. Or, and this is perhaps the most likely of these three, I am both passive and stupid. Like a cow. The point is, over-reliance on one Swiss Army knife of a weapon means you miss out on a whole layer of fun that can be had by expressing your skill through the many tools you have for the job. Weaving in different weapons together to just eviscerate enemies grants me the feeling of godhood. It's that much fun to play with your toolkit, and it really is an unfortunate but potentially crippling drawback that the game only does so much to encourage that playstyle. Regardless, nabbing this yellow skull opens deeper doors through the devil's domain, and we're able to read the first Slayer's testament. We're so badass, hell wrote poems in fear of us. These mythic texts were written by the demons and chronicle our rampage through hell in some bygone time. These are some of the most interesting parts of the game. Firstly, the prose is actually pretty good, and it's fun to hear it read back to you. The language absolutely sells the grandiose story underneath it. That goes a long way in this particular power fantasy. Let's remove Doom 2016 from any prior narrative context and act like this is the first time you're seeing this story or these characters. That's how it was for me, being familiar with Doom as a series, but not with how it presents itself. So I didn't feel like I was playing as the guy from those older games, as some human marine made heroic by circumstance. Taken only as he's presented here, the Slayer of 2016 is elemental. He is a Frazetta sci-fi barbarian, an astral embodiment of hate made flesh and come to carve wicked violence on the hides of demonkind. He is superhuman, and the power that radiates beneath every thunderous step comes from a spiraling, infinite well of righteous fury against the very architects of evil itself. That is cool as fuck, and that picture only gets fully painted because of these tags. As I understand it, writer Adam Gascoigne was brought in to pen the codex entries and all the flavor tags, so I think we can attribute these to him. But, in truth, it could be anybody. Apparently the team was so small that everybody was encouraged to just throw shit into the pot. The lead sound engineer wrote the UAC cult broadcast peppered throughout the levels, for instance. The guy who cleans their toilets even provided the screams for the Revenants, after Marty Stratton took a baseball bat to his knees a few times. I may have dreamt that. Nabbing another face-shaped key will have us portaling back around to the Blue Door, where we're introduced to another classic monster reimagined for this heavy metal aesthetic. Take a look at the Cacodemon, the latest in a string of killer demon designs. These 3D flesh parodies aestheticize hell into a corruptive, organic force that produces things of meat that have had their bodies twisted in horrifyingly alluring fashions. I wouldn't want to be a Cacodemon, but I sure like looking at them. Another new demon awaits us past that blue door in the form of these lost souls. These tiny airborne skulls will menacingly float into you, and they're not a problem until they start spawning during the middle of fights, and I have to desperately wave my mouse around before I inevitably get face kamikaze. The final demon introduction comes past another holographic record. Hayden's team ran into some trouble in hell, of all places, and those with skin made of skin and not carbon fiber were eaten alive by an oncoming horde of the undead. And, like any good boss, Hayden doesn't care, because he made sure their benefits did not include any kind of life insurance. Anyways, we get to see the heaviest regular enemy the devs are going to throw at you in the ever-iconic Barons of Hell. These beasts with armor of blood and bone plow across arenas, searing pain into the bodies of those they set their angry gaze upon. Alright, there's one final arena before we make it to this tomb of legend Hayden was on his way to. Now this is pretty cool, as the armies of damnation battle us beneath the crimson oppression of Hell's own blood meridian. The air materializes into fury itself, and our sight blurs into shades of viscera that paint the sands of this lifeless pasture. We butcher the things that invented butchery, and we eviscerate with such detestable barbarism we fathom fear in the hearts of things that were never meant to feel it.
Bisection boogie.
The final holographic record is in the tomb itself, where we find that Hayden was the only member of his search party to survive the onslaught. But survive he did, and it turns out it was he who discovered our sleeping form and recovered our sarcophagus from the depths of Hell's tortured castles. He glides those cybernetic digits across the archaic masonry, in silent understanding of the comatose hurricane encased in that infernal stone. We activate the portal he left to escape Lucifer's dungeon. The Slayer's body is brought back to the Red Planet for the next level, Hell on Mars. Samuel Hayden returns to our ear, and he describes the cataclysm before us. The portal to Hell can no longer be closed on this side, and demonic corruption now flows freely from a place downstairs the UAC dubbed the Well. I believe we are currently floating down a place I have dubbed Shit Creek. Hayden, however, is slightly less concerned now that we made the return trip.
But you've returned, the only flesh and blood to walk between dimensions. So there may be a way.
DePaul is murdering this performance. With that, Hayden tells us that Vega will provide us with information once we get to a terminal. So, on the trip there, we get to take in more incredible visual design. Demons litter the flaming horizon. And getting to walk through a familiar-looking location that's gotten the shit kicked out of it adds a feeling of progression through the narrative. It's visual, wordless, rising action. At the Vega terminal, Hayden explains that, for years, Olivia Pierce kept and obsessively studied an artifact from below called the Helix Stone. He believes that it will reveal to us how to close the portal, for the stone bears the Slayer's mark. To get to Olivia's private lab, we gotta take a tram. Because you're still playing Doom, you need a key to access the company line though. Luckily, Vega points us in the direction of one in a nearby security station. On our way there, we get another new weapon, the chain gun. It eats through bullets like nobody's business, but it will in turn liquidate anything you're looking at. And that is my business.
Ooh, rich people.
Entering the security station introduces us to the Pinky, a demon that makes a painful beeline right to you, and is most vulnerable on his fleshy, pulsating ass. I wish I liked these guys more. I just feel like, even with the double jump, I'm slightly ill-equipped to handle this movement challenge in tandem with the combat. I get steamrolled by these guys a lot. Until I started remote detonating rockets behind them, and I will eat the splash damage for that, I do not care. It's unfortunate that one of them ate the key I need. It takes traversing a few rooms that are in need of a refined form of demon removal, but we eventually track down the sleeping Pinky. It's in this very room we also catch another holographic echo. Olivia doesn't want a team going in to pull our sarcophagus out of hell, but Hayden points to the hierarchy, and reminds her that he owns not only all her work, but everything the UAC finds in its plunderings. I love that. Again, how he says this is what reveals Hayden's character. He believes the labor of others and even the land itself belongs to him because of where he sits on a corporate ladder. Private property really was the thing that killed God, for those that care. I don't. So you guys can have that one for free. After getting the key to the tram, we loop back around to that security station where we can hop on the line and head to the next level. The tram rockets us to the UAC's Advanced Research Complex, where we can gain access to Olivia's private lab. Hayden tells us his office is also situated here, and he invites us to finally meet in person. Welcome to a brighter tomorrow. The broadcasts are getting more explicitly cultish the closer we get to the heart of this corporate structure. Apparently, members at a higher level of induction get more wild shit just casually said to them. And this stage to me is where the satire reaches its zenith. I just love the way the commentary has been presented. It reminds me of something like 2000 AD. Heavy metal cultural critique that's loud and rock star, and the fact there's no reason to be subtle, to hide what we're trying to say. The commentary continues as we get another holographic argument between Hayden and Olivia, and the devs are now letting us get some real insight into just how sinister Hayden himself really is. It's revealed he knew Olivia was losing it in her obsession with Hell's artifacts, and yet her work was allowed to continue. The work in question included overseeing mass human sacrifices, for those that forgot. It was pretty obvious how far Hell had seduced her into insanity, and still Hayden let her press on for his own benefit. He let this outbreak happen, rather than pull the plug. And, after a few more arenas, we come upon Samuel Hayden in the flesh, so to speak. The first thing he does is assault our person by taping a giant magnet to our ass so he can find us the next time we end up in hell.
Do not be alarmed by the system update. It is a prototype.
The robot touched me in my no-no square.
This interaction is another highlight, and it's doing quite a bit in terms of narrative delivery. On paper, it's mostly exposition, with Hayden explaining to us that, though he's kind of miffed with us for breaking his shit, he does still want that portal to Hell closed for good. Everything they know about Hell comes from a stone tablet unearthed in the earliest days of the UAC's Mars expedition. The Helix Stone, Hayden calls it. And with it, the UAC was able to harness the power of the well for humanity's benefit. It also led the team to our resting place. Olivia was apparently clinically obsessed with the thing and spent years studying it in her private office and silently succumbing to hell's corrosive influence through the whisperings of their lost tomes. Hayden believes the stone will provide us with answers on how to shut down the well. The only way to Olivia's private office in the Lazarus Labs is through a secure elevator in the Ark. Hayden teases that we'll find a gun there that will be particularly useful. But that narrative texture I mentioned before is still being painted across Hayden's office. Again, removed from anything before it, these statues of the Slayer standing beside knightly brethren implies such a compelling story happened before we got entombed. We weren't a Marine, we were the first among equals in a band of brothers united in their expert and artful practicing of godlike war. All this is made so interesting because of how it's conveyed too. The feeling of epic history I get doesn't come from an explicit lore dump. It comes from seeing that statue and wondering over what doesn't get told to me. Narrative negative space is an immensely powerful tool for storytellers, which makes over-explaining everything for Twitter idiots an annoying trend in modern stories. As for the arena sandwiching this office encounter, I'm enjoying this level more than the previous one. The arenas here have been given a bit of verticality to them, and each layer has got its own unique layout to keep that vertical traversal engaging. The functional place meets fun level design mentality is also coming back in full force here, and I found out that a lot of that came from the id devs pretty obsessively playing multiplayer arena maps in their spare time. That resulted in these spaces themselves feeling like those multiplayer arenas, and that apparently translated to me as this dichotomy I keep banging on about like I'm getting paid by the word. I mention this only because understanding how an artistic sausage gets made is really interesting to me, and good art is the only thing this shit stain of a species is capable of accomplishing that doesn't make me question the whole enterprise. Speaking of questionable accomplishments, approaching the UAC's experimental vault introduces us to the cyber mancubus, because humanity has to attach Bluetooth to everything. But cutting a couple of those big boys down to blocks of beef leads us to the weapons division, where, tantalizing us behind a locked door, sits our big fucking gun. The key this time is just the guy's face. And after we disable the final security systems keeping us from this magnificent artillery, the BFG is ours. Along with this room that gives us a wonderful opportunity to test it. Look at their fat boil and explode when I shoot the get fucked beam. This is a great tool to use in a pinch, and I definitely got some mileage out of liquidating everything around me when the swarm was too much. Taking the elevator down to Olivia's underground compound named after a biblical zombie introduces us to the next level, simply titled Lazarus. The visuals are working overtime here. The stage setting alone is incredible, as we descend into an enormous subterranean laboratory crawling with the demons we know we're about to thin out. Hayden is in our ear and tells us few living souls have ever seen the stone, but if we came to humanity for a reason, we may very well be able to read that which was invisible to mortal eyes. This is the heart of the UAC occult, and the art design spells that out in blood red letters. This once sterile lab environment has been soaked in the viscera of those victims of the initial catastrophe, and the way the demons have violated their corpses is extra perturbing. There's also an arena that takes place in the middle of a mancubus autopsy, and this room in particular really shoved the yardstick up my ass on my first playthrough. Now though, even on ultraviolence, I am so well equipped that these guys just don't stand a chance. The intentional weapon swapping has completely changed this game for me. Now that I've run through it more times and I've been encouraged to try therapy, I'm finally at a skill level where I don't just default to using the super shotgun. There's a completely different layer of fun, murderous expression that you reach playing this way. You're always engaged with reacting to new problems that require creative, weapon-based solutions. And without the weapon wheel, those decisions are happening always on the razor's edge. The energy just never stops if you open yourself up to the whole toolkit. It still sucks that I had to be intentional about this at first, but if you can force yourself into this more difficult style, you'll feel like you're playing the shooter version of a guitar solo. You just shred. Eventually, we do make it to Olivia's private lab, where we place our hand upon the helix stone and receive a vision of the relic necessary to dry up the well. Hayden gets a peek at it too, and reveals it to be a thing known as the Crucible. Vega's got its location. It sits in an uncharted region of hell known as the Titan's Realm. We've got to blow another hole in the fabric of reality to get there though. We can use another Argent accumulator, and the closest one is powering a little specimen known as CD587. We'll have to remove the thing to turn it unstable, and the resulting energy should propel us back down to circle 1 through 9. Clearing the lab of demons takes us down to Olivia's private chapel, through to where she launched the hell wave that began this incursion. We catch a holographic echo of the very deed being done, and Hayden finds us watching. This caps off the subplot of Hayden watching Olivia unravel, and he offers this in explanation.
I pulled you from that tomb in the Cadanger Sanctum for this reason. I knew she was weak. Our work doesn't come without risks, and I released you from your prison to help mitigate those risks. I knew that in the event of a catastrophe, you'd be the only thing that could stop them.
So here's where I get to really unpack what makes Samuel Hayden such a fucking cool character for what he adds to this story. He is the linchpin that holds all the brilliant satire together. And I'm going to take this time to explain why, because this means a lot to me, and it's my video. We're already a couple thousand words in, players. Try and stop me now. For one thing, I don't crack open any of the codex entries, but even then, I understand Hayden's robot body was a way to prolong his life. A compelling detail with real-world parallels. Why is it that people like Samuel Hayden are so goddamn scared of dying? Well, let's back up a bit and examine how people like Samuel Hayden are made to live. Corporations are built on the profit motive, the idea of extracting as much wealth as possible for the people who own the corporation. For the company to be successful by definition, all of the priorities, including the welfare of the laborers producing the wealth, must be secondary. The head of a company is not only incentivized, but rewarded for making the lives of other people worse in the name of maximizing productivity. Isn't that selfish? And isn't selfishness a sin? It's a sin for a reason, by the way. Whether or not you believe in God, atheists are still going to tell you to be virtuous, because we are communal animals with brain chemistry built towards, though admittedly in varying degrees, empathy. The only reason sinning feels so good to do is because the systems that govern our lives are built on that profit motive and will materially reward cutthroat selfishness above all else. That's why so many CEOs are psychopaths. My point to all that is this. If you are a human with even a little bit of empathy and or some practiced sympathy, which is most of us, you understand selfishness to be morally wrong. But to make gains in a system that rewards sin, you have to sin. And so to be anywhere near the top of that system, you gotta really tamp that part of yourself down. You have to ignore and actively shut out the human parts of yourself that want you to be someone with morals, with principles, who cares when another is hurt. This is easy to do materially, and for some it's very easy to do spiritually. But to do that, to willingly embrace sin and literally sell the brightest parts of yourself, with ramifications that sow living misery into so many people just so you can have more of what you don't need, that's a deal with the devil. That's why the corporate satire feels so gratifying here. Hayden made a quiet deal with the devil himself. And unlike real CEOs, he gets to know that hell is real. While freak shows like billionaire Peter Thiel fear dying, at least in part, because they worry there will be ramifications for their earthly sins on the other side, Hayden knows there will be. Of course he'd do anything to keep reaping the benefits of sinning on this end of the dimensional divide. Samuel Hayden is a legitimately invigorating character to have be a part of this story. He literalizes the philosophical and emotional conflict that comes from consciously benefiting from this system of sin while expertly parodying a worldview. For Christ's sake, the guy's name is S. Hayden. Say then. Heaven may not be real, but hell sure is. And Hayden gets to be intimately familiar with where he knows he's going if it ever comes time to pay the piper. And more than that, on a thematic level, he's doing Lucifer's work on Earth. And real CEOs are still doing that, even if you believe Lucifer is a farce. Past a few more arenas, we finally come upon the cage of specimen CD-587.
587 is probably his height in inches. Wait!
The Cyber Demon is actually a pushover in this first stage. He'll charge you and he's got a couple of projectile attacks, but none of these combined should really pose an issue. Use your heavy weapons to shred down his health while dodging some rockets. But you may note I said first stage. That's because upon ripping out his argent accumulating heart, the resulting surge of energy does indeed send us back to hell. The problem being that going downstairs rejuvenates the Cyber Demon, and now we've got a more challenging Phase 2. It's a similar dance to Phase 1, but its attacks have smaller margins for error when it comes to avoiding them. The fight wasn't an amazing use of this combat and movement system, but it was fun at a baseline. Ultimately though, even the Cyber Demon can't stop the Slayer from whittling his health down to the glory kill zone.
Catch.
With the boss defeated, we enter a portal that will send us to that unknown land deep in the bowels of hell, where the Slayer will be once again made to create a glorious and violent history through these wretched halls. In other words, an ideal Tuesday. The next level is named for that region we're about to traverse, as the portal plops us down in the Titan's realm. The Slayer approaches the maw of a gargantuan demon corpse, the titular Titan whose flesh has long since rotted to sand, and whose bones now stand as sturdy fixtures of hell's malevolent architecture. We pass through what was once a gullet and end up in a sprawling inner sanctum, where the damned have constructed a massive stone maze deep in the Titan's buried innards. The air is thick and reeks of a mystical corrosion of the flesh. The Slayer wades through a stench never before witnessed by mortal senses. It's almost beyond comprehension. This stage in particular is where I felt that funneled linearity was most effective. The designers lead you through a twisting, brimstone complex by means of locked doors and some portals strategically placed at the end of certain arenas. Without their guardrails thrown up to keep me from bouncing too far off the beaten path, I would surely get frustratingly lost in this place. Perhaps forever, because in real survival situations I've trained myself to just accept fate. The point is, I'm able to get the feeling of exploring this immense space without the headaches that would come from just being dropped in the Titan's small intestines and told to go nuts. We disembowel these rooms of their demon populations and, after nabbing the necessary skulls, we circle back around to the blue door. Here we place this politician's head into the keyhole, and we gain access to a portal that will take us to where the Crucible is kept. This sends us to the Necropolis, a hell city whose steel is stitched with the screams of billions. Welcome to the Crucible. We're portaling around an even more partition level than before, as these rooms have no spatial relation to each other. We're teleporting to them from this central area, housing some chains we need skull keys in order to cut down. These arenas might be trying to emulate a more classic feel, as they're less sprawling and condensed to a single square room. And I like the progression they have as the difficulty builds. Doom's pacing is kind of a double-edged sword, though. The challenge ramps up nicely on paper, but as your arsenal does the same, you have such a depth of killing machines that you don't really feel the escalation as much. At least the Slayer Testament's return to dangle a narrative carrot on this stick. Apparently it was us who fell the monster out front. Further still, we hear tale of how the Hell Priests, sick of our shit, staged for us a trap with the irresistible lure of demonic bloodshed. It turns out the promise of violence was but a veil to conceal the priest's master plan, and they encase us in that stone sarcophagus imbued with sinister and treacherous magics, keeping us comatose and leaving hell free to multiply once more, unburdened by our unending onslaught. We fucked them up that bad. Turning these locks will have the chains drop and open the way to the depths of the necropolis, where the stone itself seems made of misery. Carvings of ancient demons vomit blood into the void, their chiseled forms spelling death beyond imagination. Gone are the warm, dramatic shadows. For it seems this dead and damnable city vampires the life from even the light itself. The grand architecture is chained together in the stitchwork of this eternal cavern, and its vastness would shred the sanity of any mortal man who dared to look into the face of timeless punishment. We hop across brimstone towers built in reverence to the art of suffering. Finally, after a few more arenas, we come upon a door that bears our mark. The Slayer need not steal himself, but I might, because it seems whatever lies behind this dead masonry was conjured by hell to hurt us. Behind the door lies the Crucible, but because you can't even get ice water for free down here, you've got to battle another boss, the Hell Guard.
Oh, that's probably Ronald.
A fun fight ensues as your movement is tested in quick succession against a much more mobile opponent than the Cyber Demon. And, just when you think you've won, 2 more Hell Guards arrive to keep you away from the Crucible. Luckily, hitting them spawns bullets. I really enjoyed this second phase though. Dealing with 2 sets of those movement challenges tuned to not be overwhelming as a pair makes for such a neat boss. I could feel the movement and combat click to make for a thrilling fight. The glory kill on these guys felt genuinely rewarding to see. We claim the Crucible from its tomb, and in doing so, we see a vision of our past. Those knightly brothers who too bear our mark make a spiritual return to salute our recovery of the Crucible before our reunion is cut short and Hayden pulls us back to Mars.
MacGuffin. Oh, hey guys. Sorry you're in hell. Oh, thank God, that was so awkward.
The Slayer is dropped into the frozen plains in the north of this red planet. It's revealed that Hayden put us near Vega's central processing facility for the next stage. I am Vega. The man in question explains to us the plan cooked up by Dr. Hayden. We're going to use the power keeping Vega chugging along to blow a hole directly to the well. They didn't give Vega the ability to suicide, however, which is a fucking monstrous thing to do, so it will definitely happen to real sentient AIs. Anyway, he'll walk us through the process of killing him. We're bombarded with demons every step of the way, from lowering the security protocols to obliterating the cooling systems. It's pretty neat getting to roam around this city-sized functioning computer, thinning out the population of the undead as we explore Vega's immune system. Overall, this was a fun penultimate stage. The locations were an environmental shakeup, and the arenas were spacious enough that flying across them to hunt for goodies felt pretty rewarding. Eventually, though, after a dramatic elevator ride, we make it to the core.
They will not allow access to the well without a fight. But I'm sure that's what you're looking for, isn't it?
It doesn't take much to destabilize Vega's brain now that we've shut off his cooling system, but I love the hesitation in the Slayer before ultimately deciding to back up our AI friend.
The living are not done with you, my friend.
And, with Vega safely tucked away on a USB stick, his frontal lobe goes nuclear. The Slayer is absorbed in a blast of white-hot, explosive energy, and he stands stalwart as Vega's death reconstitutes the very matter around him, pulling us to the well, the beating heart of Hell's invasion. When the light subsides, we find ourselves in familiar territory. Yet this stone did not come from the underworld. This is Argent D'Nur, the landscape of our final level, the well. Approaching the ancient city has us walk beneath decaying statues of the Slayer and his knights, all coated in layers of sand-swept time and the dust of an archaic hell that stretches back beyond the invention of history. The architecture of this place is meant to feel different, foreign to the demonic masonry we're accustomed to. I gotta say though, they don't really tweak the aesthetic far enough for that feeling to really land with impact, but I'm sure that's a tricky corner to be in, having to design another kind of old-ass building that's somehow different than the other old-ass buildings that are also covered in the dust of an archaic whatever the fuck I said. Still, what are the story implications here, now that we understand this lost territory to be the former home of the Slayer and his brothers in arms? Let's investigate as we press on. This stage has a nice progression. We have to fight our way into the ruins of this gargantuan cathedral, where demons fester throughout this place like pustules, a blight on our land. We fight our way to a strange creature known as a wraith, one of 3 corpses who, in death, have had their bodies tortured endlessly to power that churning cauldron of hell energy Hayden calls the well. We free the first wraith with the power of the crucible, and another ghost from our past points us onwards. With that, we traverse deeper into the cathedral to free the other wraiths. So, as we cut down the final bits of opposition between us and the next wraith, I'd like to convey how all this lore landed for me in my personal mythologizing of our lead. This was a grandiose moment, and it solidified the history that's been building behind the Slayer as a character. Here's what I read. We are an immemorial powerhouse, hailing from a land that existed before the soup of matter was stirred to make our world. Long ago, before thought or understanding, there was a great war fought between the forces of cruelty and these knights of dateless honor. We were one of those knightly protectors. Yet, chief among those warriors forged in the genesis of warfare was us, the Slayer, who sowed destruction and death amongst the hordes of the damned with such brutality, our brothers began to wear our mark in reverence to the annihilation we were capable of. The Slayer, to me, is a godly embodiment of anger, of rage, elemental, primordial, emotion made manifest. Even after our culture was lost to Hell's forces, we kept fighting. We alone walked the fiery plains and seared a path of death so righteously furious, Hell had to lock us up and throw away the key. And they used our mark to forever send shivers down the spines of the damned. Once we finish our narrative here, I'll delve into why that interpretation meant so much to me. But just on its face, is that not fucking awesome? Is it not dope as hell to become Wrath itself? It's a power fantasy that feels earned through the gameplay and the narrative. Even the gods we worship sound angry. We bow in service to the wraiths, and we are their ultimate weapon of vengeance. After a final, kinda cramped arena, we free the last wraith. More ghosts appear to guide our way forward. And if they weren't glowing as green as those light bars, I might not have known where to go. We enter another gaping maw, surrounded by the spirits of those brothers we lost untold eons ago. Upon falling, we run into Olivia again. I love this moment. All we get is one final lament from Olivia before the devil gives her a twisted version of her desires. Was it immortality? Godhood? Whatever she sacrificed over 60,000 people to achieve, she's granted it when Hell's magic twists her into the Spider Mastermind, our final boss. And we'll never get to know for sure what was in that Faustian bargain, but we don't need to, for the same reason we don't need to know why Hell betrayed her. It's Hell. As for the final boss itself, I gotta admit, it's not a high point. Every boss so far, we've been able to essentially keep at a distance while they soak up our heavy weapon ammo. And this one is no different. I just think the boss's offense isn't pushing my movement in combat like the Hellguards before. Plus, there's this one attack where she electrifies the floor and then makes these pillars lethally pointy. I think all you have to do is double jump while the needles are out, but I can never get the timing right. So anytime she decided to do this, she got to kiss my BFG. It was annoying because I never really felt sure if I was doing it right, and it kept killing me. I don't even know why she's being so aggressive. If I were the devil, I'd want nothing to do with our world. Why give up the bliss of endless suffering for the law of chance, where instead of absolute pain or absolute pleasure, you get neither and have to deal with faded in-betweens until you die for no reason? Hell would at least have actual flavor. Eventually, though I couldn't aim with it for shit in the campaign, the Gauss cannon landed the final hits on the Spider Mastermind, preparing Olivia for a little lobotomy from my big fucking gun.
Yummy, yummy in my tummy.
With the death of the Spider Mastermind, Hayden pulls us back for one final exchange. It's incredible. Hayden keeps us chained up so he can visit us in person. The dialogue continues to mythologize us as this incredible force of rage that won't stop until every demon is dead. He admits we may be right, but like the company man he is, he's willing to keep playing with the devil. He takes the crucible from us so he can continue the UAC's pillaging of hell's energy.
Rerouting tether coordinates complete.
Our time is up. I can't kill you, but I won't have you standing in our way. Until we see each other again.
I think I left my wallet in there. Hello?
Before we go, I want to finally dive into what about this narrative I find so spiritually enthralling. Firstly, I feel this way because Doom 2016 is presented in such a cohesive narrative package. It's probably the one thing it still has over Eternal. So I didn't want to give lip service to the way this story has been presented, because that delivery is what gives me the space to fill in that mythology with feeling rather than explicit text. I said up top that I find anger to be nourishing, and hopefully now you can understand what about modern living makes it so contemptuous to me. But the truth is, I think existing at all is something to be angry about. We sit at a point in our economic and technological development that makes modernity particularly horrifying, but honestly, recorded history seems to show that we'll be more or less getting reruns of the same base conflict with increasing bloodshed until we're all dead. Now go a level deeper than that. The skies are void and everything we touch is without substance. We're cogs in an empty machine, dreaming ourselves somehow different than hamsters, while both of us strive to survive with as little pain as possible. In short, to be human is to live like a freak in a meaningless nightmare. Given that conception of humanity, you might see why I hate existence. It's not a thunderous hate, at least not all the time, but it is there. And since everything that I despise about life is baked into the experience, I found that my hate beats beneath so much of my own life. This isn't meant to be a rant for no reason. I only bring this up because I am so sick and tired of seeing pieces of art reflect the societal belief that anger isn't something to feel, it's something to overcome. But what do you do when what you're upset about deserves that response, and it isn't going away? Then it might be necessary to accept anger is a powerful thing, and deserves to be experienced through a healthy outlet, like any fucking emotion. For me, that outlet is art, whether I'm creating it or experiencing the stories of others. And so I yearn for a piece to treat that scarlet emotion with a reverence so rare in our culture. And here came Doom, where the storytellers crafted a fantasy where you are apotheosized into the patron deity of hate. And through the interaction between player and game, I get to become the thing my feelings resonate with, in that symphonic key of rage. Maybe you don't hate life itself. Or maybe you do. I think you're justified. Regardless, you don't have to see all of creation as useless and miserable to need a space where rage is sacred. As long as anger is something we all feel, and we believe it's not always worth getting rid of, then here is a narrative that is the definition of catharsis. Wrapped in a wonderful layer of modern satire, beneath it all, Doom is a religious experience for those whose hate is shackled and chained, but whose expression could be holy. And at least in this, there's something to hit. And I'm not so far gone that I'm going to start shooting rich people. Honestly, I'm at the point where anything less than a planetary self-destruct button isn't worth the trouble of doing. So if somebody ever steals Bezos' skin, you know it wasn't me. Actually, that was a bad example. Imagining him walk around without skin is pretty funny. Doom means quite a lot to me. It came to me when rage had begun to blossom into the great flaming red flower whose thorny vines electrify my veins. And here sat this game that encouraged me to let that anger loose on the virtual stage, for we need not be ashamed of it here. Indeed, you inhabit the very god of anger itself. And I became nothing less at a time when I needed an artistic outlet for anger like a furnace needs a vent. None of these feelings would be possible for me if Doom wasn't unapologetic in what it wants to be. I know none of the id guys were thinking of rage with the same reverence that I do. Not because I'm particularly intelligent, but because most people aren't philosophical pessimists. Even though Hugo Martin may not hate life itself, he imbued his own work with a confidence in what it wants to say. And what it wants to say is so rare and powerful that this is one of those times I feel like a game was made with me in mind. And I don't want to lay all the credit for this piece at Martin's feet. He's been the mouthpiece for a lot of the game's ethos, but he's also been very vocal about the fact this was made by a small team. So each creative voice was integral to make this choir sing in that key of rage. The result is a piece that's big budget yet immensely intimate, and it expresses itself so powerfully that you either can't stand the noise or it's the song you've always needed to hear. I adore art that does that. Even if I can't get down with what Hello Kitty is trying to say, if the movie is confident in its voice, I'll at least walk away respecting a cartoon feline that would probably spit on Chinese people. I'll be upfront and say the gameplay got less entertaining if you're at a certain skill and you can't force yourself into a particular playstyle, but this issue was more than fixed and eternal. And though the combat design evolved into sublimity come the sequel, the singular, cohesive narrative package on display here evokes such depths of feeling in me as a reader. I enjoyed playing Doom Eternal leagues and bounds more, but I won't say that the on-paper story is an improvement. For that reason and that reason alone, I say this piece is still worth playing. Hop in and swim in the tempestuous waters that tell you it's okay to be angry. When else could you be? Demons are real. Here is a shotgun. It's crazy that my brother, Private PP, also went through a similar ordeal. He definitely gets less angry than I do, which is probably why he still has his sanity after braving the depths of hell. Oh yeah, that's right. You can lay insanity at my feet all you want, but that motherfucker is right as rain.
He's just a real silly guy, if you couldn't tell.
Personally, I thought I was silly too, but then I couldn't stop laughing at the idea of remaking all the Terrifier movies shot for shot, but the only difference was he went by Fart the Clown. So I'm either nuts or just stupid. Yeah, but probably both.